Why is Kansas Governor Sam Brownback on a campaign to preserve what some see as an unpopular tax? This week, Governor Brownback goes on a tour of university campuses, trying to prevent them from losing millions of dollars in cuts from the state legislature. Lawmakers are refusing to renew a 1% state sales tax imposed during the administration of Governor Brownback's predecessor, Democrat Mark Parkinson. But Brownback says if the tax is not renewed, it would mean a 4% cut to universities, and that would be what he calls a momentum killer for the state. But isn't it strange to see Brownback in the position of lobbying for what some say is more government spending and advocating for more taxation, Steve Kraske?
You know, Nick, it is very, very strange to see this going on. I think it's a continuing sign of just how desperate this governor is to retain this tax, because he knows, and so many lawmakers in Topeka know, you remove this 0.6 of a cent sales tax to existing state revenue, and you've got problems up and down your budget, even more remarkable than you have right now in the wake of the big tax cuts that passed last year. This is a very strange sight, and the prognosis right now, Nick, is that the State House of Representatives is not going to allow this sales tax to go through. The budget will have to be cut in the way that Brownback fears. And this is Republicans over in Topeka sort of building their own nest here, Nick.
So what happens then if this sales tax is not renewed in the state of Kansas then?
Well, it depends on what other changes are made to tax law in the state of Kansas. There is some suggestion that you could trade keeping the sales tax for other reductions going forward, but every projection suggests that if you lose that money, the $700 million hole in the state budget grows even more wide and makes it very, very difficult to fund the core functions of government, not just higher ed. Higher ed is always an interesting political issue because not everybody goes to college and not everybody sends their children to college. And so general taxpayer support for higher education is always a bit problematic. So it's interesting to me that Sam Brownback would sort of, push in the chips on that. But he needs the money, as Steve suggests. He's trying to figure out some way to convince lawmakers to keep.
But the connection seemed to be this week, though, it was all about higher education. If this fails, higher education is going to suffer. We had even the chancellor of the University of Kansas saying, it's going to be medical school students are going to suffer. We're going to have fewer doctors in the state of Kansas, new medical students. And even the KU Cancer Center could lose its National Cancer Institute designation.
I doubt that. I don't think that'll happen. But clearly, this is a sign of just how desperate, how eager this governor is to maintain this tax, to be building this campaign at this point in the legislative session, Nick.
But imagine if Brownback loses and he doesn't get his way on this tax, he still wins. Because politically, he can go on the campaign trail and say, I fought for higher education. Right. And it was the State House that blocked that, not me. I fought for your kids getting a better education and lost.
Eric.
And the highest profile aspect of Kansas is KU, K-State football and basketball. So the picture could be, hey, we're going to lose these programs, even though these programs are making millions of dollars with NCAA tournaments. So that's the Achilles heel to most people because that's the highest identifiable thing.
Let me just say this very quickly because Eric's right. We're seeing this in Kansas. We see a little bit of it in Missouri. I did a story on the sequester, the federal sequester this week. Everyone loves cutting spending until it actually impacts something. Yes. Then suddenly I can't fly, I can't go to college, I'm going to lose my accreditation as a cancer center. They can't measure flood stages on the Missouri River. We're not going to, if every time something is cut, you hear the kind of reaction that we've heard in the past week, we're never going to cut spending in this country. And I think to some degree politicians are beginning to understand that. We'll see.